All right, welcome to the first podcast of Story Mine. I'm Shawn Stanley, and I'm here with
Ethan Stanley.
we are writers and authors, and we've had tons of cool ideas for stories, and we have great discussions about how these stories and the backstories and how they're going to get better. And we thought maybe other people would like to see or hear these discussions of how these stories come about, how they are built.
How they
And
evolve from one idea to the
yeah,
other and end up with what you read on the page.
yeah, and so when you get a book, you will know all the discussions of how that got there, how the characters got there, what their hero's journey is, how they were able to overcome, why these people were villains, and all the things that go into making the stories. We thought it'd be interesting for listeners to hear some of that.
Yeah.
Now we have several stories that we thought we could start with. One is a book that is going to be a trilogy. I've written the first book already. It's entitled Lost Lake, and volume one is Duality. It's a wonderful story. It's a adventure fantasy type novel. Awesome, awesome story. And there's another one that Ethan is writing and starting. It's called Lies, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk more about how this world is built and what how it's going to get formed to where you come into the story in chapter one.
Yeah.
So Ethan, kind of tell us a little bit about this world.
So, this world has a bit of history. It's a medieval fantasy sort of book, but the current setting is a bit of a low magic fantasy. There's a bit of history already with magic, and you always have your stories of wizards and sorcerers who, use their power to get more power, to become the emperor, to become the king, or to enslave those. And in this world, or in this general country, that has become, people kind of know that it's a thing, and they don't like that. So magic is persecuted. Magic users are persecuted against. They're hunted down. Um, People don't like magic.
And either they have to flee or they are killed, because magic is always used for bad. They always used to conquer war and fear, and all of that is what they associate with magic. So they don't want any part of magic anymore. So those that have magic flee to a land in the north in a mountainous region. Is that
Yeah, and
correct?
so in the north of the country where everything is going to be based on, or where everything's going to be set in, to the north there is a colder, more mountainous region where it's a notorious place for magic users to go. The native people of that land, they are the more hardy, um, raider, more Viking-like kind of people, and they kind of, adopt these people in
The magic people.
the magic.
But one thing you might want to make mention here is that they use magic not to cast spells, so to speak. They use magic to create things, to control elements, but not to cast spells. Like a dragon, Ethan had mentioned earlier, a dragon is not a
Oh
real
yeah, so
creature.
mythical creatures. You think of Pegasus unicorn, you think of a dragon, you think of any D&D monster. In this world, all those are wholly artificial. Every single thing that couldn't be found in our world is something created by someone using magic, and so they normally tend to be deadly war, creatures bred for war.
Right. So just to keep that in mind, that's what the magic users use the magic for, to create other creatures totally artificial. They're not organic, but they have magic in them because they were formed with magic.
Yeah. Um, a high cost of a magic, in order to do something quite powerful would require a human soul. So that brings in an extra, you know,
Yeah, to create something like this, someone has to die to use that power to.
Say to create a dragon, you would need a sacrifice, or to create something as powerful as a dragon, possibly more than one. But that adds another stigma to.
Yeah, so there's this conflict of having to sacrifice someone. Now, the sacrifice normally has to be done willingly. It can't be someone that you just kill. So that.
Well, it's possible that some magics could require,
Okay.
There's at least the necklace that we've talked about,
Oh,
that
right,
requires it to be willing, a willing sacrifice. But it's possible that because of the nature of that it is, that it has to be willing. But other magics could just
require a death of a soul.
Yeah.
So that brings in you kind of get an idea what this world is like. Now we bring in the characters. There's a knight called.
Are you talking about
the king?
King Kethel.
Kethel.
So about 70 years ish before the start of the story, you have your classic young Prince Charming knight saves the day, kills the dragon who's terrorizing the country, and marries the princess. That knight is King Kethel, or Knight Kethel at that time, and he goes up against not just a dragon creature itself, but a magic user of a sort that has dragon powers, Dragon Queen Matherin. The legend goes that he slayed her with possibly the only excusable magical thing in the country, which is a magical enchanted sword that would be the key to defeating her. He was able to defeat her, save the day, and then
everyone worships him. He becomes king.
He marries the princess, becomes king, and it's 70 years later when the story starts.
Right. But what we wanted to kind of make this very intriguing is there's an interest of Kethel and this creature Matherin before she became a creature. This is.
We were talking about this a little bit before we started the podcast.
Do you want to go into that a little bit, or do you?
Yeah. So we were discussing possible origins for Matherin, because when I first started the story, I was just riding off the seat of my pants, and I wrote up first she was Matherin the Vampire Queen, then I thought and I made her the Dragon Queen, to be fit more the classic, very stereotypical knight story. But we've been talking about origins for her and possible love interest between her and Kethel before things went awry. One idea that Shawn here had was if she was actually killed and he had to kill someone else to bring her back, and bring her back, she.
So him and Matherin were in love, and everything was going good. But then she was, I wouldn't know if she was to be killed, but maybe maimed, where she is dying, and maybe half of her body is just totally messed up or destroyed. And so the only thing he can do, and he knows that magic is not very liked then, but he has magic and he's been hiding it.
Yes, so the stigma of magic has been a thing for about the last 200 years. It's a thing that everyone knows about, not new.
And so he's been hiding it, but so when he sees that his love is dying, he says, well, I have to use magic, but to save her would require a soul.
Yeah, the amount of magic that would go into that would require a soul.
So we had maybe discussed, maybe it's Matherin's sister that he goes and kills and uses that power from that soul to save her. And when Matherin wakes up, she's no longer human. She's a half human, half creature with spiral type horns and things. So she's more dragon-esque than she is human. And she discovers that Kethel killed her sister and used magic to save her.
Yeah.
And she's infuriated and leaves.
Yeah. Ideas um, took her to to the north. Right now, I haven't called the Badlands. I'm not quite sure about that name, but go to the north where other magic users have fled, and the shock troops and the warriors that would require a conquering force that would require that would call upon this classic story of a knight saving the realm could be warriors from the north, the Viking-ish Scandinavian warriors up there who are somewhat all right with magic.
Well, tell me. I mean, Ethan needs to correct me if I'm going kind of astray here, but let's say Matherin runs up to the north. Now, because she was created with magic, she has magic powers, and
Yeah.
Kethel knows where her magic lies, and it's in her horns,
Yeah.
where her magic is stored, or where
Mm-hmm.
their power comes from. She becomes very powerful in the land of the north because she's this half human, half creature, not a total artificial creature.
Yeah.
So she has this human element that is incredible and can really be influential in helping people gather and unite. And maybe this village of the north, maybe they decide to use their magic not to destroy or to get power, but they use it in a nature type thing for good, for
Yeah.
peace, for unity,
Very druidic, sort of witchcrafty ways. That's more land and things like
and
that.
water and earth and fire and those types of things that help unite and create and in peace. Everything is working in harmony up there.
As I think about it, that actually might fit really well. If they're in this colder, mountainous region, farming could be really bad, but with the aid of magic, they're able to get regular harvests.
Warmth and things, yeah.
That's like how they kind of survive, and that's the reason why they haven't adopted the hatred against magic is because they kind of
Need it.
that's
Yeah,
what they've
yeah.
depended on.
That's where these kind of discussions are kind of cool when we come up with these ideas. So the kingdom knows that the people that have magic are up in this region, and
The
they're
main
afraid
the
of them.
main current kingdom's called Cassadil, by the way, so we can
Oh
just
yes.
keep names to these rather than just north and the main.
So Cassadil.
Cassadil.
Okay.
So he's King Kethel of Cassadil. Got the K's in there,
So
except
they,
Cassadil's a C. But
they can go up against battle of this land of the north, and because they're up in the mountainous region, they know that area much better, and it's hard for an army to climb up into
yeah,
the
you can't
mountainous
exactly
region.
invade it. It's kind of hard.
Right, and so they are able to control their area up there and then not be defeated. Plus, they have magic powers, and they're creating this perfecting their craft. They're getting very powerful, but to this point, they're still using it for peace. But everyone else is afraid that eventually they're going to go, no, we want power, and we're going to come and destroy you.
Yeah, it's like if one country started stockpiling nuclear energy, but they were using it to fuel their homes and to to power their microwaves and
Yeah.
ovens, and people are like, well, where's the weapons going to come in? That's going to come eventually, right? You're going to make weapons out of those.
So we have this half human, half creature Matherin, and we have Kethel, this knight that created her, and this love interest that has been broken by this betrayal of him killing her sister, but he only did it because he loved her and wanted to save her.
Yeah.
And so Kethel's still hiding his magic. No one knows how this creature came to be, but there's word that comes about
Yeah,
her.
legend has that she just appeared, that she's a mage of her own, and she gave herself these powers and kind of led the charge. That's what Kethel told everyone. So that's how the legend and story
So
goes.
everyone is fearful of this dragon queen, or what he labeled her, and no one knows her true origin. And so we have that backstory to kind of understand where this world is when it comes into chapter 1, or the prologue. Now, we had a lot of discussion on the prologue, and I think we made a lot of
Yeah.
progress on it. So why don't you kind of start off with how you have the prologue? This is just
Currently?
yeah.
Okay. So, currently I have it starts with a dream memory of Kethel and Matherin. Um, with current things developing, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to keep it the exact same way, but currently um, they do a sort of a blood linking ritual, kind of kind of like Blood Brothers style. Um, they they make a slice on each of their fingertips. They press their fingertips together, Tarzan and Jane style, linking them. Um, Something frightening happens. Kethel wakes up from his nightmare. To
Oh,
um,
I think we got ahead of ourselves. One thing that we have to mention is there is a battle between the North with Matherin leading the battle and Kethel.
well, that'd be long before the prologue.
Right, and but
Yeah.
to get to the prologue, they have to understand how his crown is made.
I guess so. Yeah. So, um, I guess if this is a podcast talking about ideas and possible behind the scenes stuff, um, the legend goes that King Kethel kills Matherin, and as he takes her horns and mounts them to his crown or helmet or
And correct, so he forms this crown that integrates these horns of Matherin, and he uses those horns to have proof that he killed her, but he couldn't kill her because he's still in love with her. So he's imprisoned her with magic, keeps her away forever. She can't escape. The magic will doesn't allow her, and without her horns, she does not have any powers to do anything.
yeah.
So now we're talking.
Or she has it's vastly decreased at least. I'm not
Okay,
still figuring everything out, but
so anyway, so he is still hiding this,
oh yeah,
hiding that he has magic, hiding everything. That these horns have given him some more power as well, with integrating into his crown. So I just want to let you guys know that before we get to the prologue. So please continue, Ethan.
well, so yeah, so he wakes up to a being woken up by one of the maids, or yeah, there's a woman in labor. He goes to her. Um, she's very weak, very tired. She's lost a lot of blood. The baby's born, and he holds on to her as she passes away, promising to take care of their child. Um, it's kind of a tender moment. But then two cloaked figures step into the room and address him, and he stands up and orders them to take the baby, and he tells them to kill it quickly, finish it
Yeah.
off tonight.
And so his demeanor changes after he promises this woman, I'll protect her. I'm gonna raise her as my own. Don't worry.
Well, raise it. He doesn't specify
Oh, raise it. Sorry.
gender.
And
He doesn't. He
so,
doesn't see it at all.
and then as soon as she dies, his whole demeanor changes, and these two cloaked men come in, and he says, "Take it, do it quietly, quickly." And everyone in the room is like shocked, like, "What?"
Yeah. Um, the hooded men themselves are kind of arguing back, like, why? And he's like, it's because it's my orders. I'm commanding you to do it.
I'm
He
your.
gets, he
Yeah.
gets a little angry. And
So they take the baby.
they take the baby. They go to do their job, and then a maid enters and tells King Kethel that the queen wants to see him. And he's like, of course she does, and he then walks out of the room.
He puts on his helmet
He puts on his helmet or
with
crown
the crown with the horns. Yeah.
So the reader reading this for the first time, that would be, kind of a shocker.
Right.
The prologue describes Matherin with the horns, and then you have the horns on the helmet or the crown, and then you have this baby that's being killed by that's the son of or
And
the child of him and not the queen. And
the thing is, the reader may not know about what the horns, where they come from, and everything until later on. But
well, if I
because you're an
describe
art,
in the prologue, hopefully, if I describe them the exact same way, then hopefully they'll get it. If I describe in the
right?
in the
But
dream
some
her
of the
horns
things will probably be revealed later on in the story. But
oh yeah,
if you're on this podcast, you understand all this stuff before.
you're getting major spoilers.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a spoiler. It's just an understanding. Um, but I think these things, as they're revealed, as these onion layers are peeled back, you start to understand. Wow! But you have to get
Yeah, all this stuff that we've talked about, aside from the prologue, is not written and probably
right.
won't really be discussed until the end of
Yeah.
the book,
Right. And some of the
if
stuff
anything.
that we discuss may not ever make it in the book. We just discuss it, and then so
Yeah,
part of
not everything has to end up on page.
part of this is for you to kind of see how things are coming about, and and maybe if you want to make some suggestions of, hey, I like this, but boy, it would be better if it went like this. I guess that could be, but any suggestions and everything would be the property of us. There would be no anything interpreted that any reward or royalties or anything like that for any suggestions that would get maybe making in the book would be there's nothing there. Um, so there, I guess there has to be some legalities here also. But anyway, we're just starting this idea off.
Yeah,
Thinking
literally
that
talked about this. You know, what time is it now? We talked about this maybe 9 hours ago.
yeah,
It's
and
the evening now.
and we said, it might be interesting for people to do this, and we love the discussions we have and how we come about it, and you can become part of that. So this is something that what you've heard tonight is something we've already discussed, but tomorrow we'll get maybe into chapter one, and or the next podcast. I don't know if this will be tomorrow. The next podcast will be more in chapter one, and we can always bounce back. I mean, podcast to podcast, from story to story. I'd love to have a podcast on Lost Lake and how that
Yeah,
world is, because that's
'cause
here in the U.S. It's a 1933 kind of story during the Depression. Totally different type of
yeah.
story.
Kind
Anyway,
of, it's still fantasy elements. I'd say it leans more towards sci-fi than anything,
yeah, it might, it might.
but
Anyway, that's a whole other story
yeah,
on a different podcast. But hey, as far as tonight goes, I think this is probably a good point to call a night, call into the podcast. Thank you
well, I
for
mean, most of the idea we had for the podcast was discussing ideas, or kind of just listed things we've already discussed. Um, yeah, I mean, most of what we thought for the podcast was like what we had just upstairs of just talking and bouncing ideas back and forth. But well, I guess for the first one, I guess it's fine.
yeah. So thank you for joining this podcast.
Very professional.
Yeah, we will we will do more.
We're sitting on a couch right now.
Yeah, in our room, where we're going to make into our makeshift sound studio.
We got pillows lining the walls so it doesn't bounce.
Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this. There's more to come. It's fun for us. Hopefully, it's fun for you, and we'll continue with more. Good night.
Good night. Cancel.